Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all my blessed beloveds out there in video land. You're watching Living and Thriving with Rustie, and I'm Rustie. Oops, looks a little weird in the video. It's just my printer. Strange, I know. Today's guest is Arti. She's coming back, and I'm so excited because I loved who she is and what she does, and we're going to talk about grief. Grief is a complex topic with lots of layers, and really it's very individual. So let's get to it. So I'm really excited that Arti and I are going to talk about grief and loss today. I'm so glad to have you back, and you look so pretty in pink.
Thank you. I'm loving your blue too.
Blue is my color. It's my jam.
Yeah, love it. It's my favorite color, actually.
Good. So my darling, how is your week going for you?
Good, good. How about you?
It's good. It's chaos right now because this is, I've got today and tomorrow to clean, pack, and organize my life for the next 14 days of being on the road. So it's like crazy chaos.
Yeah.
But I'll get through it. Always do, every year. So let's talk about grief.
No, that's a subject, Rustie, that's so deep to my heart, and I feel it so deeply that I think the thing is, it has a lot of people talk about what's called good grief. There's actually a book called Good Grief, and then the idea behind the fact that grief is just a part of our lives. And I think now finally we recognize that it's not only related to death. I think COVID has taught us all that it is related to living loss. So we now are looking at a full gamut of spectrum of grief finally, which makes me really happy actually that we are recognizing that it needs to be talked about and addressed. And like it's a part of our lives, and we can't hide from it.
I think it's a very layered topic too. I think
Yes.
that grief is very individualized, it's very layered, and if you're not well equipped and you don't have coping mechanisms and you don't have a support system or tools and resources, then it's a lot harder to get through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. And again, people feel shame. It's like mental health. A lot of people still do not actually need to be seeing a therapist currently. They just need a coach, right? Someone to help with these transitions, yet they're still afraid to take that leap because, again, we haven't made it a norm to seek help, a norm to look at grief, right? We're always said, oh, it's okay, get over it. So what's happening now is you have a lot of people who are assimilating it back into living, but they haven't actually had a chance to grieve a lot of things, right? They've just, I'm seeing it. I saw it this past weekend where everybody's hanging out, and they're really excited, but then there's a part of them that is feeling like, wait, I haven't processed anything yet with my people or with somebody.
I think one of the largest things that I realized, I take it for granted. I take my work for granted. I take my abilities for granted. I really do. Mm-hmm. And when Rona hit and we went on lockdown, I was extremely surprised at how many people are not good with silence. And in that silence, it brought up things that they haven't had to deal with in many, many years, or haven't confronted, or haven't even remembered in a lot of cases, because we fill our lives with such busyness. And it was very striking how a 2-week quiet time for most people really sent them through a war zone inside their own head. For me, and probably even for you, it was like, woohoo, I get to meditate every day, like 12 hours. I'm so excited.
Yes.
You know? And for a lot of people, it wasn't like that. They didn't find the joy in the silence.
But Rustie, I think we talked about this last time, you have to do the work. So if you haven't done, and I hate to say it that way because it's not a chore, it's actually a beautiful gift you can give yourself, but you have to constantly do it, and you have to start. So I'm sure for you, I have done my work in my grief journey, and I think that's what the issue finds. You have to do it, and you can't avoid it. I try to avoid it myself. We all do it. It will come like a ton of bricks every time you run from it, it will find you, it will hunt you down, and it'll take over, right? So my message now is like, well, why not just address, it's like addressing a root at the root, right? If we address it right there, you can nip it in the bud until it becomes catastrophic, because we have seen it become catastrophic for lots of folks. I've seen it for my own clients. I saw it for myself. Like, it becomes catastrophic, right?
I think what I love about the work that you do, there are not many of you, meaning there are not a lot of individuals who can embrace the uncomfortable conversation that we inevitably will have with ourselves and our family members. And on all levels, you know, grief is an all level thing. Why do you think we are afraid of it? Why do you think we run from it so much?
Well, Rusty, I think as joy seekers, I don't know why I'm bringing up Adam and Eve right now, but like Adam and Eve and joy seekers from the beginning of time, I think that the thing that's happened is when we're seeking joy or happiness, I'm going to say happiness because actually everybody hasn't, my level is like happiness and joy is really the one we want to get to, right? Which takes some time, but I think we seek happiness, and so we're so scared of the negative connotation of grief. It has such negative connotation. Death has such negative connotation. Excuse me. And with that connotation comes, then I don't want to go there, right? I don't want to feel that pain. And so I think it's actually held in the word meaning.
Keep going.
You know? So for instance, labor. When someone's going through like we say the end result's so powerful that baby's going to come out, but the actual act of labor, it is a labor of love, but so is life, right? When you are burying somebody, that is a labor of love and looking at their legacy and looking at their time. And even if you don't get to bury them, the idea of grieving them and looking at life and looking at it backwards is just part of labor of love. I call it the labor of love because grief is a labor of love. You don't have a choice. You have to do it. If you want to have a fulfilling life, you're going to have to do it. I don't know how not to tell you that anyone I've encountered that is living a joyful life has done, they are doing the work, and they continue to do the work. And I'm not just talking about self-improvement. I'm talking about digging deep down into your demons and addressing all of the characteristics of being jealous, angry, frustrated, hate, all the words that I even suppressed because I thought they had such negative value, right? But I do address that. I do get jealous at times when my husband is able to hang out with his parents, right? And I'm not. I can address that and address the elephant in the room for me now. Or the fact that my babies will never know my parents in living form. I can address that. But those are the things that take a lot of work to admit to ourselves and to others because of the shame that we carry.
I was about to say that I think a lot of that comes from a perception of shame, a perception of guilt, a notion that somehow things are supposed to be perfect, and it's not real. You know, we're born, we get middle-aged, which is where I'm at now, and then you die. And in between, you eat and you laugh, and maybe you have really great sex and eat chocolate. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's it. Woohoo!
That's it. Woohoo!
But I think for the most part, we come up with these other fearful things that in the process we have to be ashamed or guilty feeling about death, dying, grieving, when it's just a process of learning. I mean, toddlers are great, aren't they? They can fall down and bounce back up, and they're cool with it. They're like, yeah, that's fine. Let's do it again. When you get to a certain age, you're like, dude, I've got to own this and feel guilty about it and make it a horrible thing when it's not. I mean, living life and experiencing life in all of its subsets and qualities is what we're supposed to be doing in a lesson form.
And Rusty, it comes down to metamorphosis, right? Like, you know, Eric Carle, who's an awesome children's writer and illustrator recently, he passed last week. And why I'm bringing him up is because he, in his art for children, brought up metamorphosis all the time. The Very Hungry Caterpillar classic. Like everything that he did in his artwork was transformative. And he always shaped it in a way that was just shaping art through different transitions. And in all of his art, if you look at it, and his books and his stories. But the fact is we are metamorphosizing every single moment. And so to run from it is like, I bring up again a butterfly. We all think butterflies, most of us think they're so beautiful. We actually stop in nature and watch it flutter, or a beautiful bird. But yet we're not realizing to stop and look at our metamorphosis as being a beauty, right? Because it is. It is, it is. It totally is.
I think that when you decide to sit in that loneliness and you decide to sit in that quiet and you decide to have a conversation with yourself, that's when you get to see all the beautiful colors in your wings. And it takes a lot of bravery because we're often afraid of ourselves. But I also think that socially we made an environment to fear ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the more conversations we have, such as this one, or ones that a lot of actually, now that podcasts and YouTube videos and all of this I feel like we're finally saying, come on, let's really make this active boiling process to help boil it to the top. So you have no choice but to hear this more than the perfect Instagram, right? The perfect model, the perfect body, the perfect this, versus the, oh my gosh, like I had a horrible hair day today. Like the more that we bring these issues up to the top, the more that the tipping scale can come to what's reality, which is the real living, and offset the balance of what's been created as this superficial lifestyle that is not fulfilling anyone. It's been shown, Rusty, these studies have been shown all over the place. It's not working. People are not fulfilled.
They're not, and they're hungry for more, which is why consumerism, and that's a completely different show in its own right, as you know, consumerism is a drug, and it's trying to stuff that hurt and that pain and that silence that you're trying to run from, instead of just sitting there and facing it and being good with it. I think people are beautiful. I think they're delightfully flawed, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's not enough of us telling everybody that, though, right? There's millions of people in the world, and there's like 1,000 of us. We got a lot of work to do.
1,000, yeah. Until they realize all of these great tools that we can give ourselves, right? Like empowerment through, like you used the word meditate. And I just want to remind everyone, you don't have to sit there and like meditate forever, right? Like this is just closing your eyes for a second. The power nap. The power nap is meditating, actually, when you like really want to close your eyes for a second and just going inward. That in itself is meditating. And there was a seminar recently done called Meditation is Medicine. Totally. Because of the fact that it is really going to that core level of just being able to sit for a few seconds and turning off our brain. I mean, you really need to be able to turn off your brain. And that's what these drugs and these things and these consumerism, that's what it's doing. It's turning off our brain, right?
I just had a really beautiful Reiki session the other day, and I'm, again, incredibly busy right now. This is the busiest time of the year for me. Mm-hmm. And I had to just come up with 3 simple words to say over and over and over and over and over again, just to quiet down all of the other chaos that goes on in this labyrinth. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that is a way to meditate. If you don't feel like you can completely have silence up there, which I don't know anybody who can, this is a highway, right? Mm-hmm. Mantras are great. Walking is great. Listening to motivational speeches, I love that too, but it's really quieting the chaos.
Yes. I recently, in my master health coach class, there's an app called I Am. It's free, and you can set we all have our phone accessible. So it just, at times when you need it, it gives a little bit of that affirmation plug in a really fun way. And it's like the universe is telling you exactly what you need in that moment. So it just all really feels good. And I can tell you that it helps your dopamine receptors. Something's happening because I can actually look at it for a second. I'm like, oh yeah, right. So things like that, where you can load your phone up with some good, wholesome stuff versus, you know, the junkiness that we all can put on our phones, right? Which is our biggest tool right now to either build ourselves up or negatively break ourselves down. You know, like, what is on your Instagram feed? You know, what do you have on there? Is it joyful living hobbies that you have decided to plug in, or are you following some motivational speakers? I mean, what are you plugging onto your phone? What are you watching on the TV? You know, like what are you consuming is really important to pay attention to, because I think the times that you'll know, I want to watch trashy TV, that's fine. Why are you doing it? Because I just want to sit and just chill, right? Like, you just have to know the reasons why you do things.
I think writing has a lot
And
to do with it too. Huh?
oh, for sure. For sure.
And
Absolutely.
I don't think you have to be a perfect writer. I don't think it even has to be sentences. I just think you need to write the chaos down or draw the chaos. My daughter's an amazing artist, and that's how she deals with a lot of her emotional stuff as a teenager, is she draws some amazing pieces. But that focus on creating out of the stuff is beautiful.
Totally. Rusty, I'm glad you brought up not just journaling, but the art of journaling. I do a lot with my clients and also for a lot of seminars. And I remind people it's not about journaling. It's about drawing, doodling, whatever you need. It is the outpouring of your subconscious, unconscious. I mean, and that's where artists, we need to start giving artists the true value that they deserve, and musicians, that whole right side of the brain, the folks that have really got it down. But using journaling or doodling is really therapeutic in itself. And I mean, I don't have anyone that I won't suggest doing something like that, because it's free. It's left to your own interpretation, and it can be picked up anytime. And it's very powerful.
I think cooking is one of mine personally, because I love to create and I love to find healthy ways of doing the same thing pretty, you know? And so that's another creative form that I think people could utilize easily in order to, you know, defunctify the brain, because it's fun.
Totally. And you're mindful in that moment, right? Writing, you're in that moment. Your brain literally has to just freeze. And I can often tell you that people who are often looking at recipes now will look at their ancestors. Like, a lot of people will say, oh, I'm really interested in making what my grandmother used to make with that index card, or, you know, or, oh, my mom never left me some recipes, but I really want to try to recreate. So you can do a lot of your own grief journey loss through cooking and trying to share familiar patterns of cooking with your family with that, you know.
And getting to know who your ancestors were. I mean, I don't have family. So for me, knowing that I grew up, you know, Appalachian, Cherokee Indian, Southern, all of those things actually are tricks and tips to tapping into the past, right? And how fun is that to be like my own Scooby-Doo? I get to dig around and like create things that maybe they ate.
Totally.
Or gardening, you know, like Native Americans have a very specific way of gardening, and what a neat concept. I never knew, but I had to dig around and find out, right? And that makes it fun. And I think it puts perspective on your grief too, you know, and it might not ever go away, but you can definitely change its form, right?
Yes. Right when you said that, it reminded me of a sculpture, like clay. You get to form it, right? But it starts being flat. Clay is flat, and then you have to form it and mold it, and then you get to be the artist who designs it. And that's the same thing with the grief. Like, as much as you think it will consume you, and at times, no joke, it will. And like, grief has waves, and you have to ride the wave. But also with the art form, there are times when you do get to sculpt it, and the way that it looks and the way that it manifests. But you have to realize that you, as the artist, have to take the ownership before somebody else or something else does, right? It can affect all of your relationships. It can affect a lot of things can happen if you don't take a hold of it.
I was interviewing a woman, a very brave woman the other day who survived a really ugly domestic violence relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Rusty, I was so angry that anybody that came near me, I would just flip off on them, flip out, lose control, get very angry. And she acknowledged that it was her behavior that was causing the shift in her relationships. And it's really fascinating how brave she is to acknowledge that, number one, because there we go, we're ashamed, we're guilty, so our behavior gets worse because we don't want to deal with it, we're in denial, blah, blah, blah. We all know those stories. But then to have to do the work and acknowledging why she was so angry. And it came from being a single mom, surviving a very terrible domestic violence relationship, and feeling guilty. Mm-hmm. And that's all that anger was the guilt for staying and remaining in that relationship. And how powerful. Her whole life changed. She ended up getting married and, wrote a book and all this wonderful stuff happened. But she had to shift that and realize that, I'm getting goosebumps right now, realize that it's all about the control or the perception of control of the narrative. So when we feel guilty, shameful, or in that process of grief, I believe the changing of the narrative is you owning the power to rewrite the narrative, mm-hmm. to change that grief, acknowledge it, and say, okay, I know you're here. I know I'm pissed off. I know I'm going through this thing. Let's name the thing. And for me, I actually put I'll make little creatures on sticky tape and say, oh, you're the thing. But it's a fun way to acknowledge that the grief is there, it exists, and okay, all right, stop. I'm done with the thing.
Yes, you're here. It's a whole different conversation, but ants, Dr. Daniel Amen talks a lot about ants, automatic negative thoughts, and so you're giving it a name so that you can really give it a name, manifest it, and then release, right? That's the goal. You're acknowledging that our brain definitely goes to places of darkness, mysteriousness, all of it, and that you have to kind of take hold of it.
One of the things that I write in my memoir, I have this lovely place I go to called the Emotional Quagmire, the EQ, mm-hmm. and it's where I hide all my scary things. And what's interesting about the Emotional Quagmire in my book is that I enjoy being in the quagmire because it's a safe place. I know where all my scary things are. They're perfectly in order and alphabetized, right? Mm-hmm. You take that place and you make it kind of a Linus's blanket, even though you want to leave it. Yeah. But in a lot of ways, you hold on to it. As we wrap up, I want you to talk to us about how to let go of it instead of staying in the EQ.
It's a deep question, Rusty.
I know, you only got 4 minutes. No pressure.
You have to, oh my gosh, that's really hard. I think you just have to sit with it. I don't know how not to tell you. You just have to sit with it. Sit with it to really feel it, to then release it. I said it earlier. I don't know how to describe it because I think we've talked a lot about this different things you can do, the journaling or the release or the meditating or the cooking or the you change the trajectory of what's happening in that moment and you do some type of release, or you just sit a pillow or you literally let your tears come out, That was one that was hard for me. I wanted to stop myself from crying for so long. And I was like, okay, finally, let's just let it go and just release. So letting that cathartic feeling of tears roll out or anger, like you were just talking about earlier, what expression, owning your feelings and then releasing them, I think is huge. So you don't let them layer and layer up.
Arti, where can we find more information about you?
So I have an Instagram page called Diya Holistic Life Care, and we'll just do quick posts about some motivational stuff usually on there. Our website is www.diyaholisticlifecare.org. And of course, we want to remind everyone we're a nonprofit and we're really looking to help support folks throughout the life's transitions, especially end of life care is a big focus for us. And I recently started a podcast TV show that comes on Fridays at 11 a.m. on Talk for Media. So that's another great way. And we just talk about all gamuts of health and wellness.
Yay! You are a beautiful soul. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Rusty.
I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye, honey.
Bye.
You're watching Living and Thriving with Rusty, and I'm Rusty, and I get to do this like 5 times a day for 7 weeks of crazy, amazing interviews with beautiful people, beautiful souls. And, you know, Artie's right. We don't have enough people having these conversations. So if you want to have this conversation with your family and friends, I bet you Artie has some tools and tips and tricks on her website. If I remember correctly, she's got some guidance for you. So definitely reach out and have those conversations, because you know what? Grief is actually kind of like your friend, believe it or not. It's a part of your growth. It's a part of who you are. And there's not one person on this planet who isn't going to go through something at some point. It's just the way the wheel spins if you go through a lot, right? Like me. But as you know, you are beautiful. I am absolutely thrilled to do this and join hands and forces with amazing people so that you have a new way of thinking about things, a new perspective, and some tips and tricks and tools to navigate through your life and your journey and your adventure. Until next time.